Yeah, man, it was terrible. I knew I was madly in love with my wife. The minute I saw her, it was
Right.
kind of love at first sight. But getting to the altar was so tough.
At 13, Jeff Bridges wrote 3 words on his bedroom door that would haunt him for decades. While the world saw a Hollywood legend, Jeff was hiding a terrible secret. He had panic attacks before scenes. He hid in garages to avoid his father. Even at 75, his heart rate hits 148 during filming, which was higher than during cancer treatment. Recently, he finally broke his silence at a major awards ceremony. What he revealed stunned everyone. The confession explains why he almost quit acting multiple times and why fame never felt right. Jeffrey Leon Bridges was born on December 4th, 1949. His parents were actors. So instead of soft lullabies and baby blankets, Jeff's early days were surrounded by movie lights and set noise. When he was just 6 months old, his parents brought him to a film set. The movie was called The Company Shecky Keeps, and it came out in January 1951. The director needed a real crying baby for one scene. So Jane Greer gave baby Jeff a tiny pinch, and he cried right on cue. The scene was perfect. On the studio record, his name wasn't even listed. He was just called Crying Baby. Later in life, Jeff joked that his first paycheck probably went straight to diapers and baby milk. But without knowing it, his Hollywood journey had already begun before he could say his first word. As he grew older, Jeff's dad, Lloyd Bridges, had mixed feelings about show business. He was famous, especially after a film called High Noon, but he didn't fully trust Hollywood. Around 1957 or 1958, he sat Jeff and his older brother Bo down and told them something surprising. He said most actors made less than $5,000 a year. He even had printed numbers to prove it. So, he told them to focus on school. No acting jobs unless their grades were higher than a B+. He even suggested they think about becoming engineers instead of actors. That rule stayed in the house for years, and it made Jeff think twice about fame. It planted a quiet fear that maybe acting wasn't stable enough. When Jeff was 13, something changed. He didn't want to be known just as Lloyd's son. So in 1963, he took a marker and wrote, "Not an actor," on his bedroom door. He started painting at Brentwood Art Center and made his first $35. By selling a canvas on August 9th, 1964, he also started a surf rock band called The Nozzles and played at small fairs in Santa Monica. His older brother Bo was learning acting scripts, but Jeff was learning guitar chords and brush strokes. His high school art trophies from 1966 still sit in his studio today. For Jeff, this wasn't just a phase. It was a message. He didn't want to follow a path just because it was easy. He wanted to find something real on his own. But the 1960s in Los Angeles weren't just about art and music. There were parties and drugs. By age 16, Jeff was smoking marijuana before math class. In the summer of 1967, he was trying LSD at jam sessions up in Topanga Canyon. One night on September 3rd, police stopped him. They found a roach in his Volkswagen Beetle. He was a minor, so they called his dad instead of arresting him. But it scared the family. Dorothy Bridges, his mother, made him start weekly counseling. Lloyd personally drove him to 2 rehab meetings that October in Malibu. Jeff later said it felt like he was about to miss the off-ramp in life. It was the first big wake-up call. Lectures weren't working. So Lloyd tried something different. One morning in early 1968 over breakfast, he said something clever. He told Jeff that acting could be a way to do everything: fly jets, play music, paint, without needing to join the military or a band. Just one job, endless lives. That idea stuck with Jeff. It made acting sound like freedom, not a trap. Soon after, Jeff took a small acting role on his dad's show, Sea Hunt. He partly did it just to buy a new Stratocaster guitar. Lloyd's quiet trick had worked. Jeff was in, but the promise of acting as freedom stuck with him for life. Even so, he didn't rush into Hollywood full-time. On May 12, 1967, at just 17, Jeff walked into a military office and signed up for the Coast Guard Reserve. The commitment lasted 8 years. It kept him out of the Vietnam War, but also slowed down his film career. He worked weekends cleaning rust off buoys and pulling midnight shifts. He later said it was torture. Still, the schedule left him with enough time to act during breaks. That's when he filmed The Last Picture Show in 1971 and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot in 1974. Both got him Oscar nominations. He wore his uniform and chased awards at the same time. In 1975, he finally left the Coast Guard. Coincidentally, that was also the year America ended the draft. Back in 1967, Jeff had also taken a Greyhound bus to New York to study at Herbert Berghoff's studio. The school was known for tough acting lessons, but Jeff didn't care much for that. He was more excited by the music clubs and street art. He brought his panoramic camera and spent time taking photos in subways and talking with musicians and painters. He skipped rehearsals to sneak into open mic nights at Café Wah. He only stayed a few months before returning home. But even that short time gave him a line he could tell his parents whenever they asked if he was serious about acting. Even after earning an Oscar nomination, Jeff almost walked away. In 1972, he bought a Malibu beach place and rented a Venice studio, not to work on movies, but to make music and paint ocean scenes. No record deal, no gallery goal. He just wanted space, a break. He told his dad he might skip the next few movies. Then suddenly, great roles started showing up. That break didn't last long. By 1973, his talk of quitting worried the whole family. They held a meeting in their home's living room. Dorothy, always the center of the family, pulled out a notebook where she tracked all of Jeff's auditions and jobs. Lloyd reminded Jeff how acting could use all of his talents at once. Dorothy added that everyone helped each other and they needed Jeff to keep rowing with them. A few days later, Jeff said yes to a role in The Iceman Cometh, a film he'd already tried to turn down. The director even visited his art studio to convince him. That small push brought him back to the spotlight. It was the summer of 1975 in Paradise Valley, Montana. Jeff Bridges was 25 and filming a strange little comedy called Rancho Deluxe. One afternoon, he looked up and saw a woman walking through the dining room at the Chico Hot Springs Hotel. She had 2 black eyes and a freshly set nose, but Jeff couldn't stop staring. He kept forgetting his lines. The crew joked about it every time he messed up a take. Between shots, he walked over and asked her to have dinner. She said no. Her name was Susan Gueston, an economics student working there to earn some money. She told him, "No, maybe I'll see you around. This is a tiny town." That moment stuck with him. 3 nights later, they danced together at the wrap party. It was awkward, but sweet. They didn't let go. The next morning, they went looking at ranches by the river. Jeff still carries a photo from that day in his wallet. He says it's like a time machine that takes him back to when he knew he'd found the one. In 1976, Paramount cast him in the King Kong remake as Jack Prescott. The budget was $24 million, which made it the most expensive movie ever made at the time. Over $8 million was spent on promotion. They promised huge bonuses if it made more than $60 million worldwide. No one believed it would, but opening weekend brought in $7,023,192 from 9 to 74 theaters, the biggest December opening in history. 10 days later, it had already made over $26 million. By the end, it hit about $90 million. That success came with a price. Jeff was locked into interviews, commercials, and contract talks for almost 2 years. He once joked that the giant monkey didn't just grab a girl, it grabbed his bank account and wouldn't let go. Then came 1977. Susan had been by his side through all the chaos. One day she looked at him and said, "I'm going to have children and put down roots either with you or without you." That hit him hard. It was a Monday. By Wednesday, he was pacing around their Malibu cottage, thinking about whether settling down meant giving up his freedom. He even called his brother Beau in tears. On Thursday, he drove Susan to a windy beach in Zuma. He pulled out a turquoise ring from his jeans and proposed. They got married 5 days later on June 5, 1977. It was a small wedding in a backyard with her Lutheran pastor. Jeff later said that her words saved him because without them, he might have kept drifting until everything fell apart. But he didn't drift. He remembered Paradise Valley and the way it made him feel. The morning after their first dance, he and Susan had toured an old farmhouse near the Yellowstone River. Jeff said a voice told him, "Don't let this place or this woman get away." In 1979, he bought 320 acres outside Livingston. He built a simple cedar cabin with no phone, so studios couldn't reach him. In a New York Times profile from 1977, he admitted to skipping auditions to paint and fish. His agent called it career suicide. Jeff even asked for huge fees on purpose, hoping studios would back off. Instead, they kept sending offers. He said that cabin became his way to breathe. When things got too loud in Hollywood, he'd escape to Montana. He'd fix fences, sit by the river, and disappear for weeks. Still, the pull of family was strong. His dad, Lloyd Bridges, had over 150 credits. He once told a reporter he never pressured his sons. But when Jeff started turning down big roles, he called it a waste of talent. That hurt. Jeff said it burned because his dad had always supported him. Trade magazines like Variety said Jeff was right on the edge of stardom if he'd just commit. So Jeff made a deal with himself. He'd take serious roles, but only if he could go back to Montana in between. One of those roles was Cutter's Way in 1981. He said it let him prove to his dad that he cared about acting, just not more than peace. Then came Tron in 1981. He was 31, standing in front of something he didn't understand. The movie only used digital effects for 15 to 20 minutes, but it felt like the future had arrived. Even Disney's animators didn't want to touch it. They were scared computers would take their jobs. The Academy refused to nominate it for visual effects because they said using computers was cheating. Jeff was nervous. During rehearsals, he even asked the director if computers could replace actors too. What you see in the movie, his tight, worried face, that wasn't acting. He was really scared. He later joked that Tron made him look over his shoulder every time he saw a computer screen. In 1984, things got deeper. For Starman, he had to play an alien learning to move like a human. He erased all his habits. No leaning, no slouching, no blinking without meaning to. He studied a dancer to get the movements right and spent 115 days slowly becoming more human on screen. Critics loved it. He got an Oscar nomination, but afterward he didn't feel like himself. He booked therapy just to remember who he was. He went every week in Santa Monica for almost a year trying to find the real Jeff again. In 1985, he shot Jagged Edge with Glenn Close. The film was steamy and everyone was talking about the beach house scene. The tabloids ran the pictures. Susan wasn't thrilled. After 10 years of seeing Jeff flirt on set, this one crossed a line. She told him, "One more part like that and I'm done." Friends said dinners got tense. People made jokes she didn't find funny. Jeff later said that movie almost broke the peace at home. It wasn't just movies testing their marriage. While filming Against All Odds in 1983 and 1984, Jeff was often alone on set in Mexico. Reporters started comparing him to Paul Newman and Robert Redford. The pressure got to him. In 2011, he finally admitted he was drinking heavily during that time. Tequila hot late nights. One magazine writer even saw him vomit during an interview. Jeff said it was the moment when drinking stopped being fun. It started controlling his schedule. Then came The Fabulous Baker Boys. The movie was cast in early 1988. Jeff asked for time to learn jazz piano, hoping he could switch to live music if it all fell apart. He woke up at 5 a.m. for lessons. He copied Bill Evans. He even practiced miming to soundtracks. He worked hard. But on October 13, 1989, the movie came out and blew up. 2 Oscar nominations, great reviews, everyone loved it. Instead of giving him an exit, the film locked him even deeper into the Hollywood world. Jeff later laughed and said the piano was his escape plan. But it backfired one chord at a time. In the summer of 1990, Jeff Bridges found himself standing across from Robin Williams on the set of The Fisher King. Robin was on fire, improvising take after take, sometimes 20 in a row. Jeff never knew what was coming next. One night in the middle of the Bowery, Robin launched into a wild 3-minute rant about medieval knights. Jeff froze. He couldn't find his cue. At 2:15 in the morning, he walked off set, found a payphone, and called his wife Susan. He told her he felt so shaken he might need therapy. Studio records later showed the insurance paid for one emergency session on July 27, 1990. In 60 years of acting, it was the only time Jeff ever charged therapy to a film. 8 years later, on March 6, 1998, The Big Lebowski hit theaters. It didn't make much money, not at first, but by 2002, midnight showings were packed. Fans shouted lines back at the screen. Jeff thought it was funny. Then things got weird. On April 20th, 2005, a parody religion called Dudism was born. Within 10 years, it had over 600,000 self-declared priests. At an event in L.A. in 2007, people lined up asking Jeff to bless their white Russians. He later admitted the whole thing freaked him out. He said it was flattering, but some people acted like he actually lived in that bathrobe. After 2008, he stopped going to Lebowski Fest. He said strangers even tried to follow him into restrooms. They wanted wisdom. When the DVD came out in 1999, his daughters weren't impressed. Isabel was 18, Jessica was 16, Haley was 14. Suddenly, their friends had "The Dude Abides" stickers all over their lockers. At dinner on May 21, 1999, they gave Jeff a handwritten list. The title read, "Why It's Weird You're Famous." They told him kids at school teased them about his swearing. They begged him to get a regular desk job like other dads. Jeff kept that note. Years later, in a 2014 interview, he showed it proudly. He said his toughest critics were always at home. In 2000, he tried something new. He helped produce The Contender, a political drama. He wanted more control over his own projects, but things didn't go as planned. DreamWorks bought the film and recut it. Gary Oldman and his producing partner were furious. They claimed the new version pushed a Democrat message. Headlines followed. The budget was $20 million. It only made $17.9 million. Jeff played the president, but spent most of the time dodging political fire. In interviews, he later said the stress nearly killed the fun of acting. He learned that producing a film about politics can burn you out fast. In 2009, Jeff almost passed on the role that would win him an Oscar. Crazy Heart told the story of a broken-down country singer named Bad Blake. Jeff said no at first. He was tired of playing damaged men. Director Scott Cooper begged him for weeks. Jeff only said yes after T-Bone Burnett joined the project. He agreed to do it, but only if he could sing his own songs. The film cost $7 million to make and brought in $39.5 million. It won 40 major awards. Jeff said just thinking about it gives him chills. That near miss still haunted him. One reluctant yes changed everything. At the 2010 Oscars, when he finally held that golden statue, something broke through. He thanked his late parents. His voice cracked. He called acting a groovy profession. The words didn't sound like a rehearsed speech. They felt real. Backstage, he joked that winning wouldn't erase the dude. Deep down, he knew it was true. To most people, that moment looked like joy. But for those who knew him, it sounded like relief. After 40 years, he was finally at peace with it all. Later that same year, the Coen brothers offered him the lead in True Grit. They wanted him to play Rooster Cogburn. Jeff said no, not once, but 3 times. He couldn't stop thinking about John Wayne. The role scared him. The Coens promised they weren't remaking the 1969 film. They were filming the book. That convinced him. After filming, he admitted something that surprised everyone. He said turning them down had been one of the biggest mistakes of his life. The film earned 10 Oscar nominations. Critics loved his darker version of Rooster. It proved that even legends can doubt themselves. But sometimes facing a shadow leads to something unforgettable. In 1994, Jeff had a dream. He wanted to make a movie called The Giver. And he wanted his dad, Lloyd Bridges, to play the lead. That's why he bought the rights that year. But studios didn't believe in him. They said teenagers wouldn't want to watch a film where the main character was a 60-year-old man. Jeff didn't give up. By the time Harvey Weinstein finally agreed to fund it in 2013, Jeff himself had aged into the role meant for his father. He smiled and said waiting gave him the right number of wrinkles. After 7,019 days, The Giver was released on August 15, 2014. The movie earned $12.3 million in its opening weekend. It wasn't a blockbuster, but for Jeff, it was both an ending and a new beginning. He had rewritten that script 18 times. He had worked with 4 different directors, and finally it was done. But his life wasn't just about film. Back in 1983, when he was only 34, Jeff started something very different, a nonprofit called End Hunger Network. While people saw him as a movie star, he quietly worked to fight child hunger. In 2010, he stood at the National Press Club and said nearly 17 million kids in the U.S. were going to bed hungry. He called this work penance, forever complaining about Hollywood problems while children had no food. Over 40 years, his group helped push 5 major nutrition bills. In 2015, he even released an ambient music album called Sleeping Tapes and gave the $80,000 it earned to No Kid Hungry. Even during movie promotions like True Grit, he'd stay behind to meet lawmakers and talk about summer meal programs. He once joked his Oscar made a lousy soup spoon, but Jeff's quiet fight for others wouldn't prepare him for what hit in October 2020. That month at age 70, he posted a single tweet. He had been diagnosed with follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. The tumor in his abdomen was 9 by 12 inches. He'd been losing weight and feeling exhausted for months. But he thought it was just stress from the pandemic. He started chemo right away, 6 rounds mixed with antibody therapy. He also meditated every day to stay calm. After 11 months, the tumor shrank to just 2 cm. In August 2021, his doctor said it was the size of a marble. A month later, Jeff announced he was in full clinical remission. To celebrate, he walked a mile without needing his oxygen tank for the first time since treatment began. But during treatment, things got worse. In January 2021, halfway through his 4th chemo round, Jeff got COVID. His immune system was already weak. Within days, his oxygen levels crashed. He was rushed to ICU in Santa Barbara and stayed there 5 weeks. His lungs were so damaged he could only stand for 45 seconds at a time. Nurses helped him build up little by little, first sitting, then walking 5 feet, then more. He lost 35 pounds and most of his hair. Doctors later said his earlier COVID vaccine may have saved him. He said cancer felt easier than the virus, but it made him realize how thin life's thread really is. While stuck in the COVID ward, Jeff asked a nurse to bring him 2 shoeboxes full of letters. They were from his mom, Dorothy. One night, as he read them alone, he found something that shook him. His parents' marriage, which lasted 58 years, nearly ended in 1969. Lloyd had left to film a Western and filed early divorce papers. Jeff never knew. The letters showed anger, frustration, and finally a quiet healing that started with a single postcard. Let's try again for the kids. Jeff had been married to Susan for 43 years by then. He always thought his parents had a perfect love. Now he saw the truth. He started talking more openly with Susan about money, fear, and gratitude. He said those letters reset his compass, but even healing comes with a cost. Between chemo, ICU, and oxygen care, Jeff's hospital bills reached over $3 million. He hadn't planned for that. To keep his union health insurance, he needed to work again. So he went back to The Old Man, an FX thriller that had started filming in early 2020, but paused when COVID hit. Then it paused again after his cancer diagnosis, costing the studio around $1.5 million. When filming resumed in October 2021, Jeff still needed an oxygen concentrator. He could only shoot scenes for 45 seconds at a time before needing rest. Ironically, the set he once feared became the very thing that helped pay for his recovery. The Old Man finally premiered on June 16, 2022. Critics praised his tired, real performance. It wasn't acting, it was surviving. Then came April 29, 2024. Jeff stood on stage at Alice Tully Hall in a tuxedo to accept the 49th Chaplin Award. But instead of giving a usual speech, he stunned everyone. He said, "I never actually wanted to become an actor." People froze. He shared how, as a teenager, he would have panic attacks when his dad asked him to rehearse. Once he even hid in the garage for 2 hours, hoping his dad would forget the scene. He read from his old journal. Acting feels like wearing someone else's skin. Itchy and wrong. For 6 full seconds, the room was silent. Then came applause. Long, loud applause. Even now, as he approaches 75, the fear hasn't left him. In March 2025, while filming Tron Ares, his heart rate hit 148 beats per minute. That's higher than what it reached during chemo. He wakes up at 4 a.m. on shoot days thinking he'll forget how to act. He told reporters, "The fear's louder than the tumors ever were." And he meant it.